agreeing to the interview. Can you start by telling me a little bit about yourself, including your names, pronoun, and identity?
Hi, so I'm Jen Yockney. Possibly I should say Jen Yockney MBE because that's kind of going to come up somewhere in there. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a bisexual, genderqueer, trans woman, rapidly approaching 50. That's probably the other most important part of my identity these days because when your knees start to go, suddenly you become quite aware of how old you are in a way that you weren't before. And I would describe myself as a Welsh Mancunian in I don't know, an imperialistic version of Wales that extends out a bit further than than the map suggests. So it's one of those things that's, I think of that bit in the start of the book Good Omens that describes Crowley as an angel who did not so much fall and become a demon as sauntered vaguely downwards. And it wasn't like I suddenly woke up one day and was an activist. It was more kind of like there was a little drip, 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 but also perhaps being a quite politically aware teen. So before I came out as bi to myself, let alone to anyone else, Section 28 was going through Parliament, I was a good, passionate ally to these liberal causes and had newspaper clippings on my bedroom wall about what was happening with those kinds of things, entirely because it was an important principle and not because I was a big raging queer. But, you know, a lot of us go through that kind of phase, I think, especially in those days when it was so much harder to find anyone else or get to safely own labels and that kind of.
Could you just give a quick explanation for people who might not be familiar what Section 28 is? You've mentioned it a couple times.
Sorry. So it was a law brought in 1988 across the whole of the United Kingdom. It was brought in by the then Conservative government, supported by the then Labour government, stayed on the statute book for 15 years through almost equal amounts of both of those parties being in power. And literally what it said was a local authority, i.e. a local council, and by implication services that councils ran, like schools, shall not present homosexuality as a pretended family relationship and shall not promote homosexuality. It's a fascinating question of how you promote homosexuality. If you put a billboard poster on the end of every street in Manchester that said, "Be gay, it's great," how many people who had previously never thought about having sex with someone of a similar gender to themselves would go, "Well, I've never thought about that, but, you know, can you market it in the same way as you market Mars bars? I don't think that quite works." But that was the kind of like the social culture that we were in and the political discourse, very similar to what we're having around trans and genderqueer people, particularly young people nowadays.
Could you just give a little bit of a picture of some of like the practical or the practical aspects of what you did as an activist?
Okay.
Or what you've been doing?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, really, because, like I say, I sort of slid into this, but I could say that I was definitely doing things that I would now consider activism by about 1995 or something like that, which you then stop and remember, oh, good Lord, it's 2022. That is quite a long time, isn't it? This seems to have become a habit. The single biggest thing is running a social and support group for bisexual people every month. Because that BiPhoria group that I went along to in 1994 had actually, I moved away for a short while, done some volunteering with a lesbian and gay youth group far away in order to get some skills, done NVQ, not a full teaching certificate, but done an NVQ in teaching to get some facilitation type skills, because I've been to these lesbian, gay, and possibly bisexual spaces where you always felt like you were only allowed to bring sort of the gay side of yourself, and that there was this kind of thing going on, and that were also not very good for people who were gender diverse because of the way that those kind of monosexual identities could work, especially in the culture of the time. But I came back to Manchester with, I need there to be a bisexual space. I've been to lesbian and gay space, and that's clearly kind of, but I need something where we don't have to defend ourselves being bisexual. And went into the lesbian and gay centre down on Sydney Street to can you look at the room booking book? Would it be possible for me to try and make something happen? And there on the wall next to the desk was a poster saying, new group for bisexuals, first Tuesday of every month.